Thanks for joining us for another episode of Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement, here at the News Forum, where all voices matter. By next year, debt servicing levels for the federal government are set to exceed $50 billion a year, on par with healthcare transfers. Here to discuss sovereign debt in Canada and the United States is Peter Deeb. He's the chairman of Hampton Securities Limited. Welcome back to Boom and Bust.
Nice to be here, Tony. Thank you.
I guess, first of all, tell us about the nature of this ticking time bomb that is federal debt.
Yeah, Tony, we seem to have a disconnect among the western part of the G20, Europe, and North American governments and the reality of debt. They have, in some cases, doubled, in some cases, increased fivefold their total national debt since the beginning of the financial crisis in '07, and this is leading to something that's unsustainable. They got used to 0% interest rates, and they felt that they could borrow whatever they wanted because it was free. It's no longer free, and there's going to be a real reckoning.
Yeah, one of the aspects of this in Canada is that you have to not only talk about federal debt, but also the provincial debt levels. And if you add those together, Canadians are shouldering a debt to GDP ratio of 113%. So is that really sustainable?
It's not just sustainable. It hasn't been sustainable for the last trillion. In total, provincial and federal debt is somewhere north of $2.2 trillion at this point. The most conservative projection we've seen is they're going to add another trillion to that over the next 5 years. Now, the global market for Canadian dollar denominated debt doesn't exist. It's all domestic. It's all in Canada. So we've got to go and place that $1 trillion of debt. And I can't for the life of me figure out where they're going to place that trillion or the trillion that comes after it going forward. So we're headed for a brick wall at full speed.
Yeah, and that's another good point, Peter, because what you're saying is no one is buying our debt, right? And no one has confidence enough in the Canadian economy or the stewardship of that economy to take a long-term bet on Canadian debt. Is that what you're saying?
That's very true. I mean, you look at the big sovereign pools of wealth around the world, none of them really has a huge allocation for Canadian exposure as part of their portfolio management. No one's saying we have to have, in Saudi Arabia, for example, 10% of our savings in Canadian dollars. They have zero. Right. And that's where we are. So we're on our own. It'll be the 5-6 big banks. The pension funds are going to be left to manage all this.
Does this have anything to do, or is it connected at all with this push by Canadian business and industry to trying to push our pension funds to invest more in Canadian projects and Canadian investments versus investments that have a higher rate of return overseas?
Well, I think not only is business doing that, but government has been very vocal in encouraging the retirement funds and pension managers to repatriate some money. That's a sticky wicket. They really need to stay away from giving that kind of advice. These people need to act independently in the interests of their stakeholders. So yes, they are trying to bring some of that pension money back, and I'm hoping these fiduciaries are smart enough and strong-willed enough to say, no, we're going to do what's right and invest safely.
Right, because ultimately their fiduciary, aka legal responsibility, is to get the highest rate of return, right?
Yes, with a great deal of safety.
Yeah, exactly, with a great deal of safety. So let's look at this from an average Canadian's point of view. What do these higher debt levels, what do they translate into that's going to impact on the average Canadian?
Tony, money is a commodity that's priced in the markets daily. What we have now, and it's unprecedented, has never existed in history, is the government is now competing full speed and very aggressively for every available dollar of debt that's out there. They're actively out there borrowing money and competing against people trying to get a mortgage, people trying to finance home construction, trying to grow their businesses. Average Canadian is just trying to get by and finance their lifestyle. They are up against a major competitor, being the federal and provincial governments who are out there sucking up what money there is out to be loaned. And it's a devastating story, and it's only getting worse. We're headed at full speed in the wrong direction on this.
Yeah, and what it means is higher interest rates, higher inflation, et cetera, right?
Indeed, and you see some calls from government, particularly the provincial level, for the central bank to start lowering interest rates. That's
Right.
the last thing they should do. They need to rein this nonsense in before it's too late. I mean, our dollar is going to head towards disintegration over the next 4 or 5 years if we don't stop this.
Let's talk about this. We're going to take a brief break for commercials. We'll be back with our guest. Please stay with us.